And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello everyone, I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan, and this is your Alaska Aviation Weather Outlook on this Saturday, November 8th, 2025. A lot to talk about. We have active weather in the southeast and out over the Bering, which will impact areas of the west coast and going up the eastern Aleutians, lower Alaska Peninsula. So on Sunday, a windy and very moist low pressure system is going to work its way along the outer coast here of the Panhandle. As it does so, it's going to produce some high winds, wind gusts 60, 70 miles an hour. High wind warnings here for the southern Panhandle, including Prince of Wales Island areas around Metlakatla and Ketchikan. And then as heavy rain will fall too, there's going to be potential for heavy rainfall, some minor flooding from Petersburg, Wrangell south, all through the southern Panhandle. And then as that moisture encounters the cold air to the north, heavy snow could fall, especially along areas of the Haines and Klondike highways as you get up toward Chilkoot and White Passes. So this is going to be an active storm there in the southeast. Out to the west, low pressure over the western Bering is going to eventually slide a little southeastward toward the central northern Bering. And this front that's going to be pushing eastward, it's going to initially have some gusty winds along the southwest coast, Cape Newingham up toward Kipnuk. We'll see some gusty winds as we get into this Saturday night and Sunday. Also, there is a coastal flood advisory along Kuskokwim Bay. Areas most likely impacted. Kwagilingok, Kipnuk could see water levels 2 to maybe as 3 feet higher than the astronomical high tide before winds turn more easterly. Because what's going to help that turn the winds easterly is a secondary low on Sunday afternoon is going to form south of the Alaska Peninsula in the North Pacific. So that's going to take southeast winds ahead of the front and tend to turn them a little more easterly with time. Plus the winds are going to die down on Sunday, not be quite as strong and gusty. But an active pattern, IFR conditions across much of the Panhandle along with high winds, heavy rain in the south, snow breaking out in the northern Panhandle as we go through the day. Gusty winds along this front, along with some lower ceilings. We have IFR conditions out there throughout the eastern Bering. For Sunday afternoon, we find those IFR conditions extending up along the lower Yukon coast, Kuskokwim, Bristol Bays, the Alaska Peninsula, pushing into Kodiak Island. MVFR conditions are expected here in the Panhandle, though I wouldn't rule out IFR in the north because of the snow potential up that way. And also, the southern Panhandle still dealing with the strong gusty winds and some heavier rain. IFR definitely down there. And then along the Arctic coast, IFR conditions. Wainwright through Utqiagvik, east to Kaktovik and along the north slope, down into the Alcan border along the eastern portion there of the Brooks Range. For Monday morning, we expect IFR conditions to linger, especially across the intercoastal mountains here of the Panhandle. Up to the north, IFR continues about Point Lay, Wainwright, eastward through Utqiagvik, Dead Horse, and Kaktovik. And then this weakening frontal boundary with the secondary low taking shape here, North Pacific, trying to push up toward the southwest Gulf. We're not expecting as strong winds here, but certainly the moisture and any precipitation creating lower ceilings, some visibilities there along areas between St. Matthew and St. Lawrence, as well as down along the lower Yukon Kuskokwim deltas into Bristol Bay, north end of the Alaska Peninsula, nudging up toward Lake Iliamna. And then for Monday afternoon, still lingering IFR conditions along the intercoastal mountains of the southeast, MVFR elsewhere, inner channels, outer Panhandle coast. We expect IFR conditions along the west arm of the Alaska Range, especially from maybe around Rainy Pass down through Lake Clark, Merrill, and going into the northern Alaska Peninsula, a lingering area here, the YK Delta, the outer coast, and then still up along the Beaufort Sea coast, Utqiagvik through Kaktovik. And pass conditions for Sunday, Anaktuvik Pass, MVFR should hold throughout the day, but as you fly south, there are the south entrance VFR conditions. Same thing, Aitken Pass. Generally, MVFR conditions expected Sunday there, but VFR as you fly south. Lake Clark and Merrill, starting out VFR in the morning, becoming MVFR, and conditions will further deteriorate as we get into Sunday night and Monday. And Rainy Pass, generally VFR conditions should hold much of Sunday, at least through the daylight hours. And Windy Pass, generally VFR, though can run into some MVFR conditions as we head further along eastward of the Alaska Range. Isabel Pass, VFR conditions there, but there could be MVFR conditions to the west. And then Mentasta Pass will start out with MVFR conditions on Sunday morning, becoming VFR. Tanita Pass, also MVFR conditions, becoming VFR. Portage Pass enjoying generally VFR conditions during the day Sunday. And then across the northern panhandle, look for IFR conditions early, becoming MVFR, and I would expect those to come down again as that surge in moisture works its way further north and west. We have a winter storm watch out for that area, and heavy snow, low ceilings, and visibilities are going to be likely the further along we get into Sunday, especially Sunday night and into early Monday. So Sunday morning, we do have this push of warmer air as the low rides out along the outer coast. It's going to take a track like this during the day Sunday. And this frontal system, as it comes north, does have warmer air. Freezing levels are above 10,000 feet between Haida Gwaii and Vancouver Island. Notice the tight thermal gradient of the freezing levels, indicative of a front there. And so you're going to have also the potential for some low-level wind shear. Back further west, we have the front, the occluded front, working its way up into the Alaska Peninsula, arcing out just off of the YK deltas, especially outside there of Kuskokwim Bay. Freezing levels do bump upward 6,000 feet further south in the North Atlantic. But along this western front, we are going to have some precipitation and freezing levels, or I should say icing above 4,000 feet along the southwest coast, including Nunavik Island, and a little higher above 6,000 feet along the Alaska Peninsula toward Kodiak Island as that precipitation and cloud cover expands northeastward throughout the day Sunday. Now looking at the area of the Panhandle, warmer air to the south will keep things heavy rain potentially possible. Petersburg, Wrangell, all at Prince of Wales Island, Ketchikan, Metlakatla. To the north as that moisture rides and encounters the colder air up there, the upper stretches of the Haines and Yukon highways above Skagway and Haines, we could see some, at least the icing being more substantial above 4,000 feet. And looking at the jet stream level winds, we have 125 to 145 knot southwesterly jet max pulling across British Columbia. And then that's the trough, associated surface low pressure below. Behind me here, broad troughiness over the Bering with stronger winds along and south of the Aleutians, upwards to 100 knots south of the central eastern Aleutians and lower Alaska Peninsula. And then 9,000 feet mid-levels, a broad area of 50 to locally 75, 85 knot southwesterly winds across British Columbia and along the intercoastal mountains of the Panhandle. As I turn this way and look, you can see the circulation of the low out here toward the western Bering and just a broad belt of winds at 9,000 feet or 700 millibars across the Aleutian from the west-northwest, 35 to 55 knots. Taking this down to 3,000 feet. Strongest winds up here along the Kamchatka Russian coast, but we do see winds in parts of the eastern Aleutians could be up near 50 knots at 3,000 feet. Generally, though, 40, 45 knots very common. Also, as that front pushes up along the southwest coast there, Kuskokwim, Bristol Bays, we could have winds of 40 to locally 50 knots. And then as I step out of the way here, look at these winds coming up into the southern Panhandle. There are 60, 70 knot winds there down just south of, from Dixon Entrance down to off the British Columbia coast. So this is the way we have the front, the low coming northeastward for the outer Panhandle, just especially off of Sitka Craig, the Prince of Wales Island into Dixon Entrance, Haida Gwaii. We're looking at the potential for some severe turbulence along with low-level wind shear, surface to 6,000 feet with that storm in front. And then out to the west, the low that's sitting out here in the western Bering, the front as it approaches and nudges up into the southwest coast along Kuskokwim, Bristol Bay. There could be some isolated areas of severe turbulence there off of Kipnik and off of Cape Newingham. Surface to 4,000 feet, and then there could be an area of isolated severe turbulence in the central Aleutians, surface to 3,000 feet during the day on Sunday.